Hey everybody, UmbraRays here, just making a Master League video before the actual event starts. Of course, nobody exactly knows what we are in for, what this mode will be like, whether there will be any problems or anything like that. But I just wanted to make a video talking about units that I think is going to be good, the strategy I'm going to be going with. And obviously, I will be adapting. You do kind of have to adapt a little bit as to what other teams are going to be like. But this is kind of my prediction for what I think is going to be good and what I will be going with on the first little bit of this event. Now, Master League Zero, I think everybody wants to get as many rewards as possible, but as I've said in a previous video, I do think that whales are just going to be massively favored in this, and that might be a little bit frustrating, so just try and roll with it as best you can. We do know this. All Master Battle League or League battles are simulations, are automatic. Unlike typical battle rules, the order of actions is determined by mobility and reaction, regardless of whether or not the units are in your force or in your opponent's. So mobility and reaction are incredibly important for determining turn order, but not necessarily for success. As I have played in War of the Visions, speed was incredibly king in that. So I'm not ignoring this. I'm definitely not ignoring it. But at the same time, I don't know if that it will be the most important strategy, as all offensive-based teams could crumble really quickly to a couple of well-placed defender-based teams. But according to what I've essentially seen from the live stream, it's going to be just 5 units. It doesn't look like it's a very big map. It doesn't look like there will be much separating the units, if I'm remembering what I saw correctly. It just didn't appear that big. It seemed like also that is just to do with the fact that there's like a time limit on this. It's not allowed to go forever. Whoever has the most units standing with the highest amount of HP at the end is the winner, kind of thing. And if you win, you rank up and get points and all of that good stuff. If you've played other games, you know what to expect. So let's talk about this, the protagonist and the rag thing. It's a space stage, which is good for the first one because it means that basically every unit's going to be playable for the most part. At least the big, highly focused on units for the first little bit, when everybody was out there recommending the Exia and the Freedom Gundam and all of the Strike Freedom and all of that, and the Theta Gundam. All of those are going to be perfect for this stage. So that's good news for a lot of people. Hell, even one of the Gundams that I have not been the most keen on, the Narrative Gundam, will do well on this and probably will be quite nice for a defender in this. There's also the rival tag and the protagonist tag, which is connected to units. So just flipping over here to my other screen, if you go on the SD Gundam G Generation Eternal unit list, you can see all the details, and this is a great tool for preparing for this, and I'm sure other people have talked about it, but hey, this is my video. So showing off here is also a nice way of checking out mobility of units if you are specifically wanting to see some of the highest mobilities in the game for potential turn orders and everything like that. You can essentially just go into units. I recommend just going for one of the most obvious ones, which would be just the Freedom Gundam, because it does essentially have the protagonist tag on it. Clicking on that will bring you in here, and you'll just be able to table and sort it. Now, again, mobility probably isn't going to be the only thing. Unit going in really quickly, getting defended against, and then potentially getting countered, as well as getting hit with a support, might be enough to just clean other teams' clocks out and remove key units very early on. But this is a handy resource for seeing that there is a ton. I do mean this. There is a lot of units to choose from for this event. I do expect URs to be king, so that's the ones that I recommend most. Even if you have a lot, maybe some SSR quality units in the mid tier that are 3-starred, I wouldn't necessarily not pick a UR. So my overall strategy, this is currently what I am thinking, is that I am going to go in a general layout of essentially 2 defenders on the outside of the formation, 1 attacker in the center, and 2 support units on to the left, or well, to the, I guess, given that it's supposed to be like this, the top pattern. Now, I mean, I guess League, when it comes to this, it could change. Maybe there's a little bit of, they've changed some things since the initial live stream. I don't know, but this is what I remember seeing, so this is what I'm kind of going with. The whole idea here is essentially having 2 defenders on the outside to potentially block an incoming initial attack and then counter back hard with really strong offensive units. And to that point, one of the units I will absolutely be bringing in my team is the Freedom Gundam. The Freedom Gundam is one of the ones that I think will be generally the best here because, I mean, for one thing, it had upright, so there's a pretty good chance that a lot of people do have this unit, maybe even 3-starred. But this, between all the events and everything, if you've been maxing it, this is my English account. If I head over to my Japanese account, you can see that it is 2-starred, so this is one of the reasons. I also have a fair number of the attacks actually maxed, including what I think will be one of the big things here, which is the map attack. The map attack, if I am correct in my assumptions, and this map is small enough, and if your opponent essentially kind of gets, which I assume a lot of people are just going to be jamming at highest stats, highest mobility possible, essentially going in, getting blocked by my defenders, and then the Freedom Gundam, which I do have fairly highly statted, being able to essentially map attack and get through a bunch of units' defenses. Maybe if I'm incredibly lucky, I mean, this is an auto battle, the map attack will catch multiple units in it, and then the rest of my units can kind of just go on turn 2 and destroy a bunch of units, is kind of the thing that I am vibing with at the moment. I mean, this Gundam getting a stat boost and being 2-starred for me seems like the absolute best thing going forward. So that's one of the ones. Another one that I will be relying quite heavily on is Justice Gundam as that defender, mostly because it can block a couple of incoming attacks. I've had this unit be very, very reliable, even as a decent damage dealer. As you can see, I do need to pump up some of the attacks before getting into this whole event, but I'll get there. It's not super serious until it's actually live. But yeah, this is one that I think will be really, really good. I also think that the G Gundam narrative will also be a really nice defender in here. There aren't a ton of great defensive units that actually go off in the UR quality. There is the Hyperion, but the Hyperion is pretty big investment, which I imagine most players won't have done and probably won't be a super big investment at this point. The narrative, however, and the Justice Gundam excel very well in this kind of environment. So I do kind of have high hopes for them being really, really good. As for the other one that I did, I am betting a little bit highly on is this, the École du Ciel, partially because it's just highly statted, but I also think it's got pretty nice abilities. It is featuring the second map attack, and it is another support unit. It can fire off multiple supports in a quick go. Last but not least, I'll just be going with the other units that I have been really kind of upgrading, and probably one lower tier defender SSR unit to round out the panel. And that does bring me back to just talking about the actual rival tag as well, which I haven't talked about too much, but the rival tag is one where there is generally less options, but we'll still be getting at least as far as I know, an equal stat boost. Here you can see the Hyperion Gundam is actually listed on here and does get upgraded to a UR, but I just don't think that it is necessarily the best place to be investing as it can be quite costly. Eternal Road also right now is under maintenance, which probably throws a little bit of a wrench into that. But yeah, you can see that the rival tag is just not super as well developed. And that kind of brings to talking about, what if I don't have UR? What if I just have not the best options out there? Well, I kind of think that if you've been doing gacha, if you've been doing a fair bit of gacha, you probably have a couple of Dark Gundams running around. That one does seem to be a really nice machine that I would kind of recommend, because I do think it is fairly highly statted. It is one of these good defender types that can do a good bunch of stuff. It also has pretty good range. Also can decrease mobility as well as accuracy, which is pretty nice. So I do like that. It also feels like this one just pops up a bunch. But in terms of development, kind of hard to say. Maybe the Big O is one that would be generally pretty nice, because that one can be made fairly easily with not too terribly much farming. Even just the base Hyperion for completing the seed content seems to be a generally good investment if you're kind of a mid-tier player and maybe not looking to commit to one of these ultimates just quite yet. Like, if you look at the other options, the Aquarius, for example, is one that I kind of am liking a little bit more, but not necessarily for this event. Looking at the protagonist tag, again, there are just so many options to potentially choose from that are not gacha options. The Dragoon Strike, the Murazama Flight capable unit, an attacker and a supporter, which would be generally pretty good if you went on the Seed Destiny, or sorry, I guess it's kind of a Seed Destiny, but the Strike Freedom banner. The Gundam Astray Red frame flight unit is a nice little defender. Going into some of the other capable units, you can find some good offensive things. G-Quux does have some limited range, but is a pretty good attacker with a SSR tier fighter in it that I think is quite good. The big thing that I think for when I'm looking at these units, gacha might not be the most reliable way of having incredibly powerful units or starred up units unless you've been doing a ton of it and maybe just gotten lucky, in which case you should play to your strengths. But if you are kind of ho-hum on feeling maybe that you're not the strongest, maybe not the best equipped for this, maybe this isn't necessarily the best one, not a bad idea to not maybe invest a huge amount of resources into pilots that you feel will be generally only good for this event, or that you're not feeling particularly that good with. There is a little bit of caution to like overspending and super trying hard on this one for something that, you know, will change and probably improve. So yeah, unfortunately, like when it comes right down to it, if you don't have necessarily the best units, going for things like the G Gundam 3, even the Zeta Gundam 3 Part 2, if you're missing URs, the G-Quux, these type of units are good fallback-ons to kind of invest on. Also, thankfully, if you've been doing the Fierce Assault from this one, there's also the Over-On. The Dice Gundam for, I know it has a different name, but that's how I call it, the Dice Gundam, are two potentially good options for you to not necessarily have to invest a ton into the actual development phase at this point. If you're just struggling, I don't think it's worth getting that bent out of shape or anything like that. It will be a learning process to see how this event goes and exactly what the boosts look like and how big of a boost those units are getting. Figure out where, you know, how to focus on this and what is realistically achievable for this type of event. But anyway, that's everything that I have to say. Hopefully it's been helpful. Maybe it's helped you figure out what you're going to do for this event. And if nothing else, thanks so much for watching. Take care. And I'm pulling for you guys out there. Good luck with this event. All right, later.